Hey everyone, it's Trey with the Social Work Come Up. I am with you this evening talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Did you know that 45%, only 45% of Black social workers pass the clinical licensure exam on the first try? Sounds surprising? It surprised me too. And so our topic this evening is failing forward, the power of the retake. I have three guests with me. These guests have all taken the exam and failed at least one time, but ultimately ended up passing. So we're here tonight just to talk about what that experience was like and how to overcome exam failure. I have Ashley Cook with me, Jermaine Brayboy, and Michelle Johnson, all licensed clinical social workers. So let's get into it. So we'll start with Michelle. Michelle, what was your licensure experience like?
Well, it was maybe about a year and a half process after graduating, and it was stressful. It was stressful in that the first time I took the exam, and I went into the exam like, okay, I've been in the field, I've been doing the work, I felt confident, and then I went in and I failed the exam, and it was just like, okay, I cried.
Yeah,
Yeah, I cried. I cried.
yeah.
I was frustrated. I was angry. But ultimately, again, for me, it was something that I was passionate about wanting to do. So it was just like, okay, let me go back to the drawing board. Let me kind of do a hard reset and start again.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Ashley, what about you? What was your experience like?
Oh my goodness. So I took the exam three times. And the first time I had like a unique experience because I actually was employed through an agency that they gave me all my clinical hours. And all I had to do was pass the exam and then I would become their therapist. Well, I did not pass. So my whole world kind of felt like it shattered because it's like, now what? And then I took it again and it was COVID.
Mm,
Yeah. So that was a rough experience for the failures.
wow. Thank you. Jermaine, what did it look like for you?
Yeah, so I currently live in Maryland, and I graduated Delaware State University in 2006. And at that time, I my career path didn't require, me to pass the exam. So my experience was by the time I decided to go the exam route, I have been out of school for over 10 years. And in Maryland, there's two tier where you must have a LMSW, licensed master social worker. And so I'll say that it took me more than three times to pass that exam because I had been out of school for so long and I had more lived experience. And so then fast forward, got my hours and decided that therapy was a route that I wanted to go. And so when I took the license clinical exam in Maryland, I passed it on my third try. And I missed it by 5 points on my first and second try. And you want to talk about anxiety? I remember when I took my licensure exam for my LMSW, I somehow made an error and went to the locker and it wasn't approved, and I almost forfeited my exam score. But fortunately enough, that was not the case. So I definitely have a journey as well.
Wow, I heard that. So, have most of you, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, when you asked me the question initially, I was just thinking about how it felt. But I actually took the exam. I took the exam three times, so I failed it twice, both times by 1 point. And so that's I think that's where the emotion came. It was like I've been in the field, I've been practicing. I had been licensed in DC because DC also has the different levels of licensure. And so and that's why all of my clinical work. And so it's just like I know the work, I'm doing the work, And to be honest, the one thing that helped me with passing, when I finally passed it, it was because I did the study guides, I did the books, but someone told me, when you're taking the test, don't think about practice as you know it. Answer the questions as if you were an old white man. And that's when I passed the exam.
Wow, Jermaine and I had that conversation last night. That's so funny that you say that. Thank you for that.
And I
Because
don't
just
want to
maybe
take over the flow, but just to piggyback on Michelle's statement, because many people don't understand that concept. And I can relate. And when, from my perspective, I hear, in all due respect, think like a Caucasian person, there's a different level of experience when you're in the field, when you're in urban communities, than when you're in non-urban communities. There's a different experience in an HBCU and a non-HBCU. The learning, the experience. So when you're going into the exam and you're hearing things like think like a white person, it's not to be racist or offensive. And I think people may not understand the concept. It is really, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, and please, if I'm saying anything out the way, mute me. It's more so that you have to take away that unfortunately
The
lived
culture.
experience.
Hmm.
You have to take away that experience when you will work with a minority family in a community and think like textbook, perfect answer, hypothetical, non-real world scenario.
Hmm. Agree. I would absolutely agree. I think that that's one thing that the test doesn't offer. I mean, in social work, we talk about being culturally competent, but it doesn't actually lend itself to culture, into being culturally competent. Again, when someone made that was the game changer. That was the only thing that changed. My study habits didn't change. What I studied didn't change. It was just mindset. So let me not think about how I actually been serving families and how I've been effective in the field serving families. Let me think as a person outside of myself.
absolutely,
This is my
absolutely.
first time hearing that, but that actually was the advice given to me without being given to me, if that makes sense. It wasn't that direct, but however, I did not pass until I was under somebody who didn't look like me. And then I was able to understand my study guides and all of those things and able to pass. So that makes total sense on what your experience was. And I was told, take out your lived experience and all of the cultural things that you know and just answer the question. And that's how I passed finally.
Thank you. Also valid. Have all of you seen, at least heard about the 2022 release of data by the ASWB and the demographics who failed the exam the most? So the demographics are Black
African American
people,
minorities.
people who English is not their first language, and older people. And so when I went to take the exam for the first time, I fell into two of those categories. I was an older person because I was over 40 at the time, and a Black individual. And I failed. And so what I did is I used a program, and this is what I shared with Jermaine last night. And that program helped me tremendously. And in the program, I guess the producer, she said, when you go into that exam, I want you to think like, and I won't say the name, I want you to think like, we'll just say Jessica. And so when I went into the exam room, I thought like Jessica. I took Tracy out of it, as you all said, some of the questions, what would you do if you were in this scenario? And so I did the opposite of what Tracy would have done. And I'm like, what would Jessica do? And I passed it the second time. And so the first time I was devastated, like you, Michelle. I cried. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a failure because I'm like, hey, I'm smart. I'm established and I can't pass this exam. And so it's interesting that all of us had to change the way that we think. And like Michelle said, the mindset to be able to conquer the exam.
So when you
Wow.
asked about when you invited us to this podcast, I was thinking like it's a really good discussion because I think the creators of the test need to consider, adding the
Absolutely.
culture because cultural competency is one of our, it's necessary. And so,
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the next question that I will ask and I'm curious about is what did failure feel like?
I can answer first because I kind of touched on that in sharing my first answer. I was crushed because I felt like I had been set up in the best way. I did all my hours, I did it in an outpatient setting. So, this would be perfect. And then failed. In my eyes, that first, like, just initial, what in the world? I'm not doing this no more. I just have to find a different career path because where do I go from here? Taking it again, spending all this money again. Let's not forget about that part. Um,
Uh,
and all the preparation just was like, I'm not doing it. I'll just have to do something different. So it was not, it was not pretty for me at all.
Yeah. I was going to say, like I said, I cry. It was, for me, it's something that I always knew I wanted to do. So my bachelor's is in social work. My master's is in social work. When I get my doctorate, it'll be in social work. And so I always knew that I was going to do social work. And I always wanted to become a licensed clinical social worker because I wanted to be able to practice. And so for me, the first time that it happened, it's like, okay, it's by 1 point. So, okay, go back, maybe freshen up in the different areas and try again in 90 days. And I legit tried in 91 day. And so when I felt the second time, that was devastating for me because this was the track for me that I had already planned for my life. And so it's like, okay, so if I don't pass this, then everything that I plan for myself, I'm going to have to change, or I'm going to have to do it under someone else always because I didn't pass this. And so I almost gave up with that third time, but I was like, third time is a charm and it's something that I really want to do. And I was so glad when I met the person who said, change how you think about it. And so,
Wow.
and I can relate to all of those statements. And I had to be intentional not to connect the behavior of failing to the belief that I'm a failure. I had to be intentional to realize that failure is not final. Because for me, and as quiet as it's kept, you don't find a lot of Black African American men in the field, let alone Black American African American men that are licensed. And there's so much of a need, and people in the community want to have representation that look like them. And for me, failure for me was devastating, and it was an emotional roller coaster. But not to get too far ahead of the question at hand, I think what you really, and I would encourage anyone have to do, is remember your why. Why are you doing this? For me, this is not just a career, this is a calling. This is connected to my purpose and my passion. And so for me, I determined in my mind that I was not going to let a test define me. And I think if one would look at those nuggets along the way that give you those reminders, whether it's like a testimony from a client, for me, I had somebody that paid for my test. They believed in me. And I think there's kind of, divine moments along the way that can give you the reminder of your why. And if not, I would encourage one to search for that. However, failure was a journey, but it also made me stronger.
I
I
agree with
love
you on
that.
that why. That why is so important because I think that that is the thing that helped me to go my third time. Like I said, for me, it was always something I knew I wanted. So my path was always the path that I wanted for myself. And so it's just like, I love serving people and I want to serve people in this capacity. Like I'm a social worker pusher. Okay. I want everybody to go into social work.
Yes.
Um, and so, yeah, I agree that why is important because that why will pull you through those moments of doubt.
And
For
that why is what helped me to get back up for my first time because I was just like, where do I go? What do I do? And then it was like, no, there are young Black women who you need to reach. You've already been told by the powers that be what you need to do. Now you just need to get back up and try again. So the second time, and let me go back and say, I failed the first time by 3 points, the second time by 1 point. And at that time, I had a new career. I was in hospital and things were looking different. And I was kind of in that space like, if I try again, I do. But I don't really need my license right now. And I had someone who has truly become like family to me, who was my coworker, and he was a Black male social worker, which we don't see them often. And he was just so dope. And he was like, sis, you need to do it. You need to do it. I don't care. You need to do it for the culture. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it that last shot. And that is truly what, like, my support's around me, my why, and just getting back up and saying, okay, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than, little old failure, a failed test. I need to get back up and try again.
And if I can add, I think when you know your why, I think that's so crucial because there was a point early in my journey of taking this test where I would tell everybody, "Oh, I'm taking this test," and it is for me very discouraging when you get those questions. Well, how'd you do on your test? And like, I don't want to talk about. And so
Test
you
what
have,
test?
more than one of those conversations. For me, I was like, you know what? When I took the test, each time that I passed on the master's level and the clinical level, I said, you know what? I'm not telling anybody. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this and I'm going to let the results show. And it was in those moments that I showed up. I was my best version. I was confident. And I think when you know you're right, we also got to make sure that we're not trying to look for, that let that be the motivation and not the pressure from external voices.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, and Ashley, I like what you said about the social worker who told you to do it for the culture. And I think it's so important for us when you said, I was like, I don't need my licensure. I don't need it for my job. And many times we'll go through the process and we may give up in that space. But I think it is important for us to do it and paying it forward and doing it for the culture because again, a lot of people who come into the people that we serve, they're looking for people who look like them, who understand their experience. And it's not that I'm just going to receive my services from what you learned about in a book. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would encourage, I really would encourage people to, if you get your master's in social work, go the distance and get the licensure. Even if you don't need it, even if you never plan to use it, it is something that will benefit you and can benefit your people at the time that you need it.
Absolutely. And I want to piggyback off of both Michelle, you and Ashley in reference to the culture. I was at a social work conference back in March, I believe, and it was the National Association of Blacks or National Alliance of Black Social Workers. And I went to a workshop, and the gentleman who was facilitating, he talked about supervision. And so once we get our licenses, we have an obligation and a responsibility to supervise to bring more people. When you come up, bring two people. And so that's what we have to do. We have to get that license and we have to supervise because our clientele should match, the
Mhm.
provider. And that's not happening right now at a lot of places.
Yeah. You know what? When it comes to the supervision too, I think it's important for social workers, for us who have been who are licensed to pull two people up and not necessarily make it another business for supervision because that's
Ooh.
you get left out sometimes because now I'm having to pay for supervision. And I've always been a person that's like, I don't mind supervising. I'll supervise because I want the social worker. I want you to get out there. I want you to be available to the people that's going to need your service. And so, yeah.
Michelle, that's another episode, supervision and making a business, because I was very put off by someone that was all about let's get the money, right? Let's charge these people money. And everybody is not in a place that they can pay $150. I have a person I work with right now that's paying $150 for supervision for each session. Yes. And so, yeah. And Ashley, your shirt says elevate. So we got to do. We got to bring people up. So I wanted to, in terms of elevate, how has licensure elevated your career? How has it catapulted you?
So licensure for me, with regards to my full time job, Well, it's offered me an opportunity to manage contracts where there needed to be a person of licensure. And so it's allowed me to do that in my full time job, but it's also afforded me the opportunity to have my own business. And so, like I stated, I have a private practice where I do individual and family counseling. And so it allows me to practice in a way within the guidelines of my licensure, but it allows me to practice the way I want to practice. And so I love that. Yeah. And that's something that is done for me.
I can share that I'm going to use some slang and say it put some respect on my name.
Mhm.
Yes.
So I knew what I was doing, but just having those letters to say, and she's licensed, and it's a clinical license, gave me the opportunity to be in the position that I wanted to be in, which is leadership on my job and do therapy.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think I have a lot of leadership experience prior to becoming licensed. And once I was able to obtain the licensure, I really felt and believe it connected me to my purpose. I love, just being in that space to provide hope and to be able to empower. And so that's really what I felt fulfilled when I actually obtained the licensure and got more of those kind of direct clinical hours. And so now that I'm clinically licensed, I'm still trying to decide what's next, but I'm just grateful to have opportunities and knowing that I don't have to settle. I don't have to lower my standards, contrary to popular belief. We don't do this for the money, but let's not get it twisted. You can have a fulfilled, professional,
Yep.
financial, goals and have a quality of life that you desire. And so for me, I feel like it has opened and will continue to open up opportunities. And I just know that I have more room to negotiate.
That part. Yes.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, and we talked a little bit about it earlier on. So what changed the second time?
So for
Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say for me, I think, like I said, the first time because I had been in practice, like I had been doing the working out in the field, I was very confident in what I knew. And so the second time for me, it was like, okay, really go through these guides and study the guides the way it's in the guide, just like the driver's ed book, right? Like not the way you drive, the way the book says. So study the guides and take all of the time in the test, like, and go back and, review your answers and not, for me, it was just like not be so confident that you got it because initially when I went in, I was very confident in that I walk out with my license and it'll be over.
For me, the second time, like I said, my job had changed and I was now in the hospital. So I had a little more experience with things. So now not only did I have outreach, outpatient, I now had the hospital setting underneath my wing. And I sat under a psychiatrist and literally he mentored me. Any question that I had, I would study and I was like, can I ask you a question? I mean, it's nothing to do with work. Can I ask you a question? And I asked all the questions that I needed. And just having his mentorship support, it truly did change me. I can't say that I went in with complete confidence like, you did, but because I remember saying, Lord, do it for your girl. This is the last question. Do it for your girl. And I passed just with the score that I needed to have. And it was COVID, like I said. So I had, and actually I passed in 2021. I said 2022 earlier, but it was 2021. So it was like right at the edge where we were still wearing masks and I'm trying to practice my breathing techniques and I got this mask over my face, but I'm like, I'm going to get through it. I've done a lot of work to get here. I done, got up and did it again. So I think that's really what like it changed, just the setting and the mentorship and the support that I had and leaning on those people.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's being said. And the question was asked what changed the second time. For me, it's the other time because I had more than two times. Um, so I think, that is a loaded question for me. We have to understand who we are and whose we are. And we are very resilient as a people. And, there was just, I can't quite put it into words, this inner just determination that I just was not going to let this test defeat me. It was just my faith and really just sitting in the moment of like, okay, being discouraged, but not defeated and taking a step back and saying, okay, what do I need to do differently? And for me, what changed was knowing the why behind the questions. It's not necessarily about memorization, in my opinion, especially when you're taking the clinical exam, it's about conceptualization, knowing like I think I had like 5 minutes left before I was done my test. I'm crossing out the answers because there's more than one right answer. I'm highlighting, I'm reading through the questions more than one time. And it was more so for me the second time, I would say that also the test strategies knowing what it's asking, doing that process of elimination. And I actually did the visualization. Sometimes we got to practice what we preach. So I wrote Jermaine Brayboy, LCSWC. Like I, spoke it. I saw it. I put that out there. I'm adding that name to my signature line and deleting it because I don't want to follow. I'm thinking of like actors have some faith. So, I think it's just really, again, when you know and you feel confident that you're called to do something, a way, somehow, some way, a way will be made. And just believing in the journey. And I think there's a time in the season for all things. And I think that everything happens for a reason. And yeah.
Wow. So tell me this. How did you rebuild your confidence? This is for you, Jermaine.
I think, as I was kind of sharing before, I had to sit. So for me, the first time I was like, oh no, I failed this by 2 point. Oh no, 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 let me help me register. And for me, that wasn't the answer as much as it was, okay, knowing that I'm not in this field for the money. In this field because the people that I feel like I'm called to serve. And I feel like I want to have a seat at the table. And so let me redefine my motive for wanting to take this test and realizing that my faith guides me and that I can do all things and I'm able to really know that I'm more than a conqueror. So really speaking those affirmations, speaking those scriptural affirmations, having safe space to share. Like sometimes I don't even need people to give me advice. Just let me drain off those emotions. Like, okay, I'm just having a moment. Like, it doesn't define me, but I'm having a moment. Let me drain off. I'm feeling discouraged. And I feel like having supported people, my wife, my pastors, my support systems, and all those individuals really just, and then those little signs along the way, having somebody to pay for my test, getting someone that can give me that mentorship, having opportunities within my job that really you need to have a clinical license, but they allow me to do it before having a license. Having those little small divine moments was like, you know what? Yeah, it's just a matter of time.
Wow. And you talked just a little about my next question, and that was it's a support. Like, what support mattered most? And that's for all, anyone can answer that.
I was going to say for me, it was family support.
Yeah.
Just because the same what Jermaine said, for me, it was utilizing my faith and affirming myself, but also being able to process it out with my cousins. So I have the cousins. But being able to process things out with them and understanding that this doesn't define me and it doesn't define my ability to do the work because I had been doing the work. And so, yeah, for me, it was just making sure I had the family support and then the support of my job at the time because I did need time to study. Someone talked about the financial burden of retesting. Um, and so, yeah, the support of my job and the support of my family. For my job, it was really about just me having the time and the time to study and also the time to take the test, take time off.
For me, I didn't have family support on purpose because I had self inflicted pressures. of you're the first one to do this, you're the first, you can do it. And they always encourage me, but I took it as I can't let them down. So I was kind of quiet about my process, and I built my support based off of my coworkers and the people around me, and I felt like I had enough to keep going. And like I said, I had one, kind of work together on a unit, and if there was downtime and there was time for me to study, he's like, go ahead, do your thing, I'll handle everything. And it was a good thing that I had going on as far as support.
And I love the framing of this question and the responses because I think reports look, support, excuse me, looks different for different people. I know some people, taking a test. What's that? LCSWC? I mean, what is that? I mean, they don't understand. So, so I think it's being able to, really have someone that can understand the language and understand, the journey. And for me, my community was small, but I think it was attributed, number one, to my faith to God. I cannot be remiss and just not forget my foundation, and then having my wife, and then having a couple of friends. I didn't want to be asked those questions. Well, did you pass the test? No. Next subject. Like, now I'm mad at you. Now I'm projecting, right? So like, I think it's just really finding someone that can really help to meet you where you are. Like trauma, right? Like, talk about overcoming trauma is like one carrying the dog. Like, who's that one person that you can kind of like lean on that can reaffirm and remind you of who you are and just really not judge you? And so, and because of that, that's what makes me so eager to show up in this space and pay it forward. And so, I mean, I know, I don't think it's going to get edited up, but if anybody needs support, if anybody needs encouragement, if anyone needs advice, I offer myself humbly and openly to do what I can with whom I can, because I feel like my journey and my testimony and experience is not just for me. It's to help someone else. And I want to do that in whatever capacity that I can.
Yes. I agree. Actually, as a matter of fact, when you said that, I was like, shoot, I got a return this call. I got a social worker who needs supervision hours. And I agree. I think that is so necessary to be able to pay it forward.
I have someone who just passed the test today. He
Wow.
took the test, and I just try and have that open door. Whatever questions you have, whatever you want to know, whatever I'm able to give to you, I want to give to you. And it's been that, and I was so happy to hear that, and especially somebody that looks like me.
That's so awesome. That is so good to hear. And I appreciate all of you. I talked a little bit with Jermaine last night, and I was sharing with him that I recently met someone who needed supervision, and I was like, you got it. And so in September, I will begin supervising someone who has been looking for supervision for 2 years. And so it needs to be accessible. It needs to be
Yeah.
accessible to us. And so I wish that I had more time, because this is a topic that can go on and on and on. And my hope is that I can bring some of you back on a future episode. But before we leave, I want each of you to leave for the audience a nugget or a piece of information or advice for those who have failed the exam and are considering retaking it, or they may have failed and they just don't want to deal with it again at all. So what would you like to leave with them?
I would start by empathizing and having them to know that there have been people that have been through similar experiences, and their feelings are real, but they're not final. And realize, I would just encourage them to don't give up.
Mhm.
I can say much more than that, but I hope those three words can just resonate until the utter, core of their being, and they get their outcome. Don't give up.
I can say that that disappointment that you feel is temporary, and it can't compare to when you get that past. Keep going. use your supports and your if you have someone that you can get mentored under, do it. And that's really the best advice I can give.
And I would really second what Jermaine said, and that's don't give up. That's exactly what I wrote on a piece of paper. As you right before when you asked the question, I wrote, "Don't give up. You're needed. You're needed. You're needed in this, in the community. And so don't give up, even if it's hard. Even if you doubt yourself. Know that your service is needed. That you're not defined by the test. The test didn't make the test doesn't create the social worker. It's just the way that we get the license. But social work is a heart job. And so not allowing a test to define your heart because it hasn't. You've been doing the work, continue to do the work. Don't give up. And remember, again, that you're needed. Your people need you. The people that look like you need you. We need you out here with us. So I would encourage any person, even a person who doesn't, they're just looking at school and trying to figure it out. Social work. Social work is the way to go. And it really is, not because I'm a social worker. It's just the way to go because it's broad and we get a chance to serve all of God's people in many different ways. So don't give up. That would be it.
I love it. Thank you. And remember that failure is data, it is not identity. And with that being said, tune in next week to the next episode, The Cost of Becoming: Financial Barriers to Licensure. Thank you.